Extending shared reality in Downstream. So hi, I'm Luke Gibson, one of the co-founders of Playmint. We're working on a game called Downstream. This is what it's going to look like once it's done. It doesn't look like that right now, in part because we don't want people to think it's done yet. So we're intentionally keeping it a little bit more lo-fi. Downstream is a post-singularity civilization simulator. And I'll explain a bit more what that means later. It's still very early in our development process, but one thing you can already do is extend each other's shared reality. One of the things we set out to do at Playmint is to create a game where players can build new things together that we can't imagine. Games industry people say, oh, you mean social UGC, like Roblox. And crypto people say, oh, you mean permissionless composability, like Loot. While we like both of those things, we don't think either is enough. So I'm going to talk today about the decisions we've made, or kind of the decisions we're making as we try and figure out how to extend shared reality. So let's start with social UGC. The big three social UGC games are on their way to having 1 billion users each, which is a lot of people, right? Social media apps like TikTok and Instagram already have billions of users, but games tend to be much, much smaller. So these games are unusually vast. The optimistic take on this, like Guilty Gyoza says, it shows the desire to take the creator stance, to be actively creating and expressing beyond passively consuming. The more cynical take is that the content that most people consume comes from a tiny percentage of users, and the median behavior on these platforms is consumption. But that's not the whole story, right? Because it's also true that the vast majority of users of social platforms have made at least one thing. So the median user has entertained the idea of themselves as a creator. The problem in social UGC games is that you can only kind of create things that have kind of been, the path's been paved for you. And as shared spaces go, they're actually a lot less shared than you think. Wizard powers. So what about permissionless composability? It's become really popular, as Agnes was saying, to assert that on-chain games get permissionless composability by default. Not only can people build on top of your game, there's nothing you can do to stop them. Wahahaha. We even been joking about it. We finally have an answer to the can't the devs do something, which is yes, you can. There's some great writing on this. I really like Guilty's composable engineering and Ronan's natural composability. And the Loot community is literally here proving that this stuff is possible. But there are obstacles to building on top of your thing. The bar is too high and the incentives are too low. Do you have to be an engineer to build on top of other stuff? And is your job to integrate different competing systems? What is this? The kingdom of middleware? And then the incentives are too low. So lots of people are like, well, if it gives me access to an existing audience, that's great. But if there isn't an audience there yet, surely it's just easier to make things yourself. So as amazing as permissionless composability is, we don't think it's enough. So what does it look like if you have 1 billion wizards together, where everyone has the power to extend each other's shared reality? Is that still a game or a decentralized platform or an autonomous world? We're not 100% sure. Sorry to own up to that intellectual honesty. But we have some ideas. And for everyone else that's excited about doing this kind of thing, these are some of the things we're thinking about. Who gets to be a wizard? What powers do wizards get? And what can wizards do with those powers? So who gets to be a wizard? We want everyone to have wizard powers, not just engineers. We want to democratize composability, let everyone have a go. It's composability for the people. In fact, we want to make extending the game an integral part of playing the game. And this has led us to discussing the importance of something that we call BX, or builder experience. A couple of things that this has led us down the path of thinking about. So this is our building fabricator. So when you create a new type of building in here, you're actually deploying a smart contract, and then anyone else in the world of Downstream can build that building too. If you're an engineer, you can use our command line and a YAML manifest. But if you're not an engineer, you can use the fancy GUI. So we're also trying to think about the usability of our systems, like I say, like usability before power. So we want people to be able to change the way things work. The systems need to function in understandable ways. So skeuomorphism and metaphors are kind of our friends, right? Digital physics is easier to understand when it has a recognizable parallel in IRL physics. In IRL. Can you say that? So what powers do wizards get? Earlier I said that online multiplayer games aren't the shared spaces they sometimes appear to be. And as somebody coming from the traditional games industry, I don't know who needs to hear this, but games kind of cheat on your behalf. They do this because they need you to have fun. Because if you stop having fun, then you stop playing the game and you go and do something else. Unlike this cursed machine where you're literally trapped in a pod. So there's a very strong evolutionary pressure on games to, at best, like precisely tailor the difficulty to match your tolerance for frustration, or at worst, to kind of just spoon feed you dopamine. But worlds don't guarantee win rates, right? This kind of benevolent manipulation is infinitely harder in shared spaces. And that's optimal. I'm skipping a bit because I just don't want to go over time. That's optimal for a certain type of fun. But you don't want to be spoon-fed fun. You want to become a wizard, right? And so we're going to turn you into a powerful wizard. We need to do a couple of things. And in Downstream, the first couple of things we're doing are auto-loading plugins and simple digital physics. So auto-loading plugins, loads of games let you extend them, but not many we found where you can, you're extending the single version of shared reality as you go, kind of the way you're acting in the same space. So this comes back to us wanting to extend the game, extending the game being part of playing the game. So we auto-load plugins, and once you deploy a new building contract, it shows up for everyone else in the list of things they can build. It's not just composability, it's real-time composability. And then digital physics. So since you can actually put custom logic in these downstream buildings, they're theoretically really powerful, but in practice, it's not really easy to know what you can do, and it's difficult to troubleshoot without our help. So what is digital physics, and why does that help? As Justin said this morning, it's not just a clever word for game rules. Guilty again says, with physics comes engineering. So if games have kind of arbitrary rules around what you can build, they kind of keep you on rails a little bit. A digital physics bakes rules into the world, and that allows people to engineer completely new things on top of it. So we've got an atomic system that allows people to build new things out of existing materials in Downstream. We've got 3 flavors of goo, and it's kind of like a building block system, which is a really simple form of digital physics. And that works for us because it allows more wizards. There are some limits to digital physics because one criticism we've heard is like, well, building blocks aren't particularly new. Why aren't you doing something more exciting? And I'm going to go quite quick here and not really explain this slide, but there's a limit to hardware. The more low-level your physics are, the harder it is to compute them in real time. And then wetware, if you go really low-level physics again, you need physicists, right, who are going to kind of build the engineering stack that people can build on top of. We don't really want to get into that. So in 2023, if you're building games on chain, you have to kind of wrestle with like, where in the abstraction level do you build your physics? And we think the important thing there is like world feel. So the extent to which something feels like a world. And you think about some of the successful abstractions, like it's unreal that Minecraft just divides the world up into 1 meter by 1 meter cubes and everyone goes, yep, feels like a world. But even in like the archetypical composable systems like Lego, there's a surprising amount of arbitrariness. So how it started, the classic 2x4 brick in the 1960s. Nowadays, Lego bricks look like this. Plain front. So why do systems end up increasingly arbitrary and opinionated? Perhaps the right amount of arbitrariness is not zero. So potentially contentious, but perhaps opinionated design systems are more interesting to build in than neutral ones that are optimized for optionality. And I think like Cursed Machine again is a great example. Like, do you want to build in a sandbox or do you want to become a stump? So this brings us to what we're working on now, which is what should wizards do with their powers? We're really proud of what we've built so far, allowing real-time composability, and we could lean into that, adding more physics, more BX, more of that kind of stuff. But instead, we're focusing on world building because we want to build a world that encourages people to create. And I'm just going to call out Gaul because this is a great example. It's immediately obvious what you need to do in the game. Build the road. And that's the kind of stuff that we're working on now. The flip side of it is, I'm just coming into land. The more autonomous a world is, the more the win condition is user-defined, and the more win conditions can be user-defined, the more autonomy a world has. So there's a balance to be had here between a sandbox and a game. And that's what a world is. Anyway, I'm going to skip through the rest. PvE is the key to world building. Player versus entropy. What's the entropy in your world? Thank you very much.